Good morning, men and women of Christ. Back with you with part 3 of this spirit-led teaching. The longevity of the flesh is in the life of the spirit. The longevity of the flesh. For us to exist long in the flesh, it can't be according to the flesh, it's according to the life of the spirit. It's according to the life of the spirit. Because if we're just existing in the flesh, then we're in the world. We're in the spirit of the world. But if we're in the longevity of the flesh, which is the fruit of the spirit, then we're in the world, but we're not of the world. And we're living in the eternal prosperity of Christ. The prosperity of the world is limited to the world. The prosperity of Christ, true prosperity, is us being set free from everything we naturally see. This is what faith does. When you come to the revelation of Christ within, it sets you free from the flesh and everything in the flesh. By the fruit of the Spirit without. That's true liberty. Anything outside of that, we're pursuing the things of the world, not for liberty, but for license. It gives us license. License comes from lust. Liberty comes from love. In lust, you can have license. That's a shadow and type of freedom, but only in love can you have liberty. Liberty is freedom from the flesh. License is a shadow and type of liberty in the flesh. Like we pursue the things of the world because we think it gives us liberty, but it doesn't give us liberty because there's no freedom in the world nor in the things of the world. It takes the strain off the flesh and it feels like liberty, but it's really not liberty. It's not liberty from the flesh. It's just license in the flesh. True liberty is freedom from your malehood as a man, freedom from your femalehood as a woman. Anything outside of liberty, it's license. You're limited to your malehood as a man. You're limited to your femalehood as a man. Remember, we were created men and women first, made male and female as a habitation of the man and the woman. But the male and the female is not the man and the woman. In being born of the spirit, it separates the mind of the flesh from the mind of the spirit. We're saved from that satanic way of thinking because in that fallen state, everything in the flesh became a substitute for the spirit. Our malehood became a substitute for our manhood. Your femalehood became a substitute for your womanhood. Everything in the flesh became a substitute for the spirit. Now, once you're back in the spirit, everything in the flesh comes under the eternal government of the fruit of the spirit. Divine order being restored. 1 Corinthians 2:14. For the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. That's the natural man and woman. For it is foolishness unto them, neither can they know them, for they are spiritually discerned. The natural man and woman. There is no natural man and woman. There's only the natural male and female. But we will refer to in that fallen state as natural men and women because sin took our spirit. When we fell from the image of Christ, sin took our spirit and conformed it to the flesh. So whereas when the flesh was under the government of the spirit, the flesh was in perfect harmony with the spirit. When we fell from grace, our spirit conformed to the flesh. So as spiritual men and women, we only could think naturally, we only could see naturally, we only could reason naturally. This is why we were referred to as the natural man and woman. And in that state, we could not receive the things of the Spirit of Christ. Now, we could receive the letter, which is the Bible, but we could no longer see the light, which is Christ. 2 Corinthians 4:3-4, for if our gospel is hid, it is hid from those who are lost, in whom the God of this present age has blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, the gospel of who? Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. The God of this present age, the God of this present world system. So in that natural state, we were blinded to the light. We could only see the flesh. We could only see the things of the flesh. We could only pursue the things of the flesh because we were outside of the grace of God in the spirit. We were actually bound to the flesh. We were bound to the flesh. Life is not in what we see. Life is bigger than what we see because life is in what we know. We have to be born back into life within so we can see life beyond the flesh by the fruit of the spirit without. And when we see life beyond the flesh, then we know that there is no life in the flesh. That's why it profits nothing. Now the flesh can have religion under the name of Christ, but only your spirit can come alive in the eternal reality of Christ. We were created spirit first, and we have to get back to our original state of living so that our living can sustain our existing because the flesh was not created to live. It was made to exist under the eternal government of our living, which is Christ. Which is Christ. We're living in the flesh, but according to the fruit of the first fruit righteousness of the Spirit. 1 Corinthians 3:19. Now, 1 Corinthians 3:19 says, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God, that he takes the wise in their own craftiness. 2:14 says that the natural man and woman in that fallen state receiving not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto them, neither can they know them, for they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 3:19 says that the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. So, excuse me, fallen man and woman in that fallen state according to the flesh is in direct opposition to Christ in the Spirit. There's hostility between the two. Because what the world calls wisdom is foolishness with God, and the wisdom of God is foolishness to the fallen world, because the natural mind cannot understand it, cannot even relate to it, cannot even receive it. Okay, it doesn't make sense to the natural mind. And the spirit can't even know it, because your spirit in that fallen state can only comprehend the flesh and the things of the flesh. So you see, though the children of the flesh are in direct opposition to the children of the Spirit. And the children of the Spirit are in direct opposition to the children of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. These two are contrary one to the other, that we would not do the things that we would. They're in opposition one to the other. Let's go to part 3, 2 Corinthians 5, 16 through 19. 2 Corinthians 5, 16 through 19. It is Galatians 5, I think it's 16, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Galatians, yes, 5:16. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And God is the Spirit. And they that walk with him must walk with him in the Spirit and in the truth. These two are contrary one to the other, which means the flesh and the Spirit are contrary one to the other. In that fallen state, your spirit is conformed to the flesh. In your risen state, your spirit is back in the image of Christ. So the children of the flesh and the children of the Spirit are in opposition to one another. Just like the flesh and the Spirit is in opposition to one another. This is why the flesh has to come back under the government of the eternal first fruits of Christ, the Spirit. 2 Corinthians 5, 16 through 19. 16. It says, wherefore henceforth know we no man after the flesh. We don't know anybody after the flesh. Was Jesus not flesh? Yes, Jesus was flesh. He was not spirit. Know we no man after the flesh, yeah, though we have known Christ after the flesh. According to Jesus, know we him no more. We no longer know Christ after the flesh. Okay. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. Okay, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things have become new. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. That's your spirit being in Christ, then you are a new creation. You're back in your original state, which is the image of Christ. The former things have passed away. We're no longer bound to the flesh. As fallen spiritual men and women, behold, all things have become new. We're back in the newness of the Spirit. We're back in the originality of the Spirit. And all things are of God, who had reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ and had given to us the ministry of reconciliation. Now that's reconciliation back to him through Christ. Christ is that open spiritual door now. That's reconciliation back to him through Christ. Once you're back in him through Christ, then he can come through you, the spiritual aspect of you, to the soul and to the body, and give you the longevity in the flesh, the youthfulness of the flesh that we once had in the flesh before we fell from the goodness of Christ. This is where our longevity comes from. It's us in him, then him through us. This is how long life comes to the physical body, so that we can have longevity in the flesh, we can have long life in the flesh, we can have health in the flesh. When the flesh comes back under the first fruit benefits of the Spirit, which is the benefits of the salvation of the Spirit. So we don't follow the flesh, we don't know anything according to the flesh. We're back in the first fruits of Christ, who is the eternal Spirit. Who is the eternal Spirit. So we're reconciled back to God through Christ. This is the ministry we have. The ministry that's in the earth today is the ministry of Christ, who is reconciling us back to God through himself. Because God has a face, and the face of God is Christ. The face of God is Christ. 2 Corinthians 4:7 says, for God has commanded the light to shine. 6 says that God has commanded the light to shine out of darkness, had shined in our hearts, to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. The face of Jesus Christ. And the face of Christ is the revelation of Christ. See, God has a face. Just having God is dangerous, because God can be a blank check and we can fill that out. And oftentimes we can fill something out in our own image and likeness. A God that's just like us. And this is what the spirit of the world gives us. But the Spirit of Christ gives us the face of God, where we see him through the revelation of him. Therefore, when we step outside of these temples, we'll see him, but we'll see him already knowing him. In the flesh, we see him, while we're in the flesh, we see him through knowing him. Once we're out of the flesh, we're going to see him already knowing him. We're going to see him already knowing him. And that's how he brings salvation to a lost and dying world through us. Because we already have salvation in us. We're already in what people that are outside of it fear. So this is the importance of longevity in the flesh. Of Christ sustaining us in the flesh so he can bring salvation to a lost and dying world in the flesh, but not according to the flesh, according to the Spirit. will separate religion from the spirit, because religion stays on earth, but the reality of Christ, that's the aspect of us that goes to Christ. He has to become an eternal reality to our spirit. Therefore, we have to be born of the Spirit. And that brings us to a conclusion of part 3 of this teaching. Love you with the love of Christ. See you next time.